Welcome to the In Search of More podcast. I am your host, Eli Nash. Join me weekly on my quest for more from myself and more from this world. We'll see you on the other side. All right, welcome back, Jackie.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Yes, so I'm sitting here with Jackie Glaser. You and I recorded a podcast episode maybe close to a year ago by now. It's a while. Earlier in 2023.
Yes, 6 months maybe.
A little more. Okay, maybe. Okay. Yeah. Where are we now? We're end of October, so yeah. I know it's been a while because shortly after that episode, I stopped doing the virtual recordings. It's been a while since we've done any. I don't feel... we got great feedback on that episode. A lot of people really enjoyed it. But for myself, I much prefer in-person conversations. So we went to this.
Yep.
So thanks for indulging me.
Thanks for having me here in person.
Absolutely. So where do you want to start? I mean, you talk a lot about dating,
yes,
etc. We went to that at length when we spoke, so we don't have to repeat some of those, but I'm sure some of those ideas will come back here. So I don't know, maybe we jump into Israel. A little bit. Israel. It's on a lot of people's hearts, a lot of people's minds.
Yeah. So Israel what's happening now, it's rattling our cage, like rattling us to the core.
Yes.
The whole country. The whole nation. And people are scared, like really scared. Me also, for our lives, really, what's going to happen, what's going to be. And so I've been thinking, like, what does God want from us? We're not on the front lines. We're not fighting on the front lines. So that's not our avoda, our test right now. What's our test?
Our meaning?
People not fighting in the army.
Okay, so you're separating it kind of into two. Those who are...
People on the army, that's clearly what they're meant to be doing.
Right, exactly.
So we're not there. We're sitting here in a comfy chair in the middle of Florida. What are we meant to be doing?
Right.
Okay, achdus, unity, mitzvahs, yes, 100%. You got to fight the darkness with light. But what does that really mean? Yes, I can do lots of chesed and mitzvahs. 100%. We should continue doing that. I can pray. I absolutely should be doing that. But there's also an inner battle, the inner game that goes on, which I think is talked about the least that I've seen so far, which is how do I grapple with my own demons, my own anxiety, my own fear, my own darkness, and what are we being called upon to do in our relationship with Hashem? So there's two different issues. One is how do I grapple with myself, my own anxiety, my own darkness,
right,
and my own where I'm going mentally, internally, and the other is.
So you're calling that categorically darkness?
No,
it
can be dark. It could be light also.
No, what I'm saying, someone gripped by fear, someone gripped by...
Yeah.
So you're calling that...
That's feeding into the darkness that's clearly in the world. Mm-hmm. So we're feeding that darkness versus fighting it with light. Now, it's easy to say that, and it sounds very poetic, but like, what does that mean inside? And the other part of it is then, what do I do with what's going on in my relationship with God? Like, how do I possibly reconcile that God is good and I'm watching these atrocities? I cannot tell you how many people have contacted me already about this issue. Like it's a crisis of faith. What am I doing? Where's God in the Holocaust? This is it. We're facing it. We're looking at it.
Really? I'm not so confused by it. I don't know why. Okay, go ahead.
So how we respond to this situation is dependent on where you really are holding with God and where you're really at, I think, and what you've built up until now. Right? It reveals that and it beckons us to build it more. But I think that focusing on the first part, which has really been Adam la'atzmo, right, between us and us, is that there's two different universes inside of us, right? Rav Wolbe brings this down, which I thought was really beautiful.
Who?
Rav Shlomo Wolbe.
Okay.
Who was very famous for bringing down a lot around personal development and parenting, actually, chinuch. And
he's modern day?
No, well, he passed away 2005.
Okay, so it's recent. Okay.
Yeah, recent. Yeah. Rav Yerucham Levavitz's Talmud. And he talks about, there's a book called Olam HaYedidus, The World of Connection. And the world of connection is a world inside of us that is the world we live in when we feel connected and grounded and open and expansive and in sync with what we're meant to be doing, and everything feels amazing. And then there's a world of disconnection. And the world of disconnection is a world of fear, anxiety, loneliness, isolation, destruction. Mm-hmm. And we can go back and forth between these two worlds in the blink of an eye, whether we're aware of it or not.
Oh, so he refers to it as two worlds within us.
Yes. And we're not aware of necessarily which world we're in consciously, but we're flicking between the two worlds, and we can flick back and forth in a second based on our choice, our intention. And it goes even deeper than that, which is the world of connection is really the world that's connected to Hashem, Shem Echad. Everything's one, everything's connected. And the world of disconnection is not really its own world. It's a mirror of the world of connection, meaning it exists when I'm out of alignment with the world of connection. This gets very deep and Kabbalistic. I hope it's not too intense too quickly.
Fine, yeah.
And I don't really understand what I'm talking about. I'll share what I know, right?
Meaning, in and of itself, it's not a reality. It's the absence of
Correct.
reality.
It's the absence of reality, the world of disconnection. And I guess the easiest way to see that is to imagine that when you're walking into a pitch black physical room, you can light a candle and a little bit of light will dissolve the darkness immediately, but it's not possible to walk into a room with the lights on and a little piece of darkness. Meaning when the lights are on, there's no such thing as a piece of dark. It cannot actually exist. It cannot exist in the face of the light.
Exactly.
So everyone gets that. However, that exists inside of us too. This exact reality is mirrored internally. And so that's helpful because when I'm feeling anxious and scared and my mind is starting to run into worst case scenarios and the fear and the terror of what's going on, when we, I'm sure so many people watching have seen the videos, and then what's going to be with us? You can't help but put yourself in that position somehow, where these are our brothers and sisters in Israel.
Right. And there's certainly a sense of if it could happen there, it could happen here.
Of course. And
it was much easier than we thought it should be, than we thought it could be.
What's easier?
It was much easier for them to do what they did.
Yes.
Than we thought it.
And not just that, the support they've rallied globally is absolutely shocking. This was lying dormant. All the rallies, all the support around the world in every city.
Okay, I don't know why I'm not shocked.
You never saw such an obvious outpouring for support of terrorism in a democratic country. I'm not shocked it's there.
But
it's the level of brazenness that's like you can't stop us,
Got you. Okay, so I'm trying to get a sense. I hear people say these things, and I'm not all the way there, and I'm wondering if I'm missing something or what's going on. But to me, it was like, what changed on October 7th? What changed on that date? I think that what was going on was unacceptable forever. Right? For how many years are people living there with rockets flying over their head, occasionally someone being killed, occasionally someone taken hostage, but perpetually the fear. And somehow we're like, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay. It was acceptable. We tolerated it for whatever reason. And knowing, of course, that at any given moment they have tens of thousands of rockets pointed towards Israel. There's a tremendous underground of tunnels network that they're building and doing something. They're preparing for it, and every once in a while they use it in one way or another. But we kind of accepted it as this is okay. It's not that many people dying, and it's not that many people being taken hostage. We're like, we're okay. And we didn't learn anything. I don't think I didn't learn anything about Hamas. I don't think you learned anything about Hamas. Meaning, there was this understanding that they did mean what they said. They will try to kill every Jew. They do want to do this. They will do it in barbaric ways. They aren't the most decent people. I never had a thought otherwise. I think the only thing that was surprising was the way it caught Israel off guard.
Yes, that definitely was a shock. No one thought that would happen, and that there's a connection of what they did in Israel with around the world so quickly, boom.
But that as well. I mean, there's every pro-Palestinian rally for the last while has been from the river to the sea, Palestine will be free. And we know where the river is and we know where the sea is, and it means zero Israel. I mean, it's not, and in order to get to zero Israel, it means all Jews dead, because the same way Gaza, in order for Hamas to rule Gaza, that meant zero Jews living in Gaza. They talk about ethnic cleansing and apartheid and all these words, but the only place it's really happening is in the territories that are controlled by the Arabs.
I think we were in denial. I think we were in denial that we didn't really think it could happen, and only when this level of breach has been able to be happened and that we're not protected whether it be the army or whatever, that's shaken up, that this could really happen. We're really not protected. It's thrown a lot of people into vulnerability.
Right. That's what I think changed. What
Yes.
changed, which is not much different than COVID in some weird way. And of course,
I just talked about that.
Right. I'm not talking about the individual families, individual people, because
Right.
like they're going through their own personal Holocaust. But that's the same whether it's a child who dies from cancer or one person who is taken hostage or killed in a terrorist attack. That's not, the magnitude of it is no different for when it's the one family, right? That one family dealing with it. So obviously for anyone dealing with it individually, then that's massive, and their whole world and the rest of their life, etc. I'm talking as a community. People are saying things, but so much of it was like, okay, we knew that. We always knew that. The only thing I think we learned is that Israel is as vulnerable as it is. Like that it's like, wow, they can get in, and they can get in at that volume for that long, and people can be that helpless for that amount of time. That, I think that surprised people, that aspect of it. But not who Hamas is, not the world supporting them in that way. This episode is brought to you by okclarity.com. okclarity.com is the upscale version of ZocDoc for the Jewish world. It is the place for any Jew to find an excellent therapist, psychiatrist, nutritionist, or coach. And it's completely free to use. Every professional on OK Clarity is vetted and experienced in working with the Jewish community, so they understand and respect cultural nuances like Shabbos, Shidduchim, and everything in between. What I love most about the OK Clarity platform is how easy it is to use their search and filter system to find the type of professional that you are looking for. They have dozens of providers to take insurance, and you can watch an intro video of each professional to get a better sense of who they are before taking that first step to reach out, which I get. It's hard to take that first step, but many of us have found that to be so very worth it. If this sounds overwhelming, they offer a short form for you to complete, and their specialists will recommend a great professional for you, all anonymously and for free. Also, in browsing their Instagram, I found content that I loved, fun and impactful. They are also regularly hosting Instagram live sessions featuring different experts discussing pressing mental health and wellness topics and answering community questions, all anonymously and for free. So if you're not already following OK Clarity on Instagram and you're using Instagram, you definitely want to. Last but not least, if you have WhatsApp, OK Clarity has an incredible WhatsApp status with over 8,000 followers, and yes, admitted, I am one of them. Their WhatsApp is a free way to improve your mental health, and they post humor. So, what do they say? Laughter is the best medicine. Side note, maybe the main note, if you're listening to this and you are a wellness professional, a nutritionist, a psychiatrist, a therapist, a coach, and you're not already on okclarity.com, here's an important reminder for you that this is a great place to be if you want to reach relevant members in the Jewish community, those who need your support and expertise. And one more thing, okclarity.com is offering discounts, or in some cases, free sessions for those impacted by the war in Israel. Reach out to them, get in touch. Addressing our mental health is the most important thing we can do, especially in difficult times.
And so that's
I was surprised the other way, actually. I was surprised that Israel got as much support as it did for the first few days after October 7th. Like, that seems to have dissipated already. Now everyone can scream ceasefire and everything else.
Right.
But that's the only thing that surprised me, is that for a few days, CNN was saying things like...
Yeah, CNN was pro-Israel. I couldn't believe it.
Right, for about a week.
And now they're back. I try not to watch now.
I'm not watching too much either, but yeah.
So what's changed is our vulnerability, and what's changed is realizing there's absolutely no one and nothing we can rely on except God. That's really what I feel this is. Like, if we zoom out from a macro perspective, we have to rely on God. We're at the sea. We're surrounded at the sea before we jumped in Egypt.
Right.
And we were forced to call out to Hashem from that place. And I feel that that's similar here. And
right, in that way, it's like COVID, because all the protections that we thought we've had are gone.
COVID was the prep for this. I really think, again, I'm not God, and I don't know what God's Judgement is, but COVID was the preparation for this. COVID was rattling our cage in a way that was scary, but it was more inconvenient. And it made me, I mean, obviously not if you experienced any death in those families, it's the same thing, what we just said about the hostages. and there was a lot of people comparative to what we used to. But in general, a lot of young people were trapped at home. They couldn't do what they want. They had to give up everything. They maybe lost jobs. But it wasn't this level of personal violence that we're seeing. Right? So I feel like COVID was a prep for releasing your grip on your life and your attachment to your life as you know it. Releasing your grip on attachment. Because one of the things it says with the coming of Mashiach is that many people won't want to go. We're too attached. We're too comfortable. We don't really want to go to the next stage.
Oh, interesting.
20% of Jews from Egypt didn't want to leave Egypt. Only 20% of Jews wanted to leave Egypt. So they said 20% of Jews are going to want to leave wherever they are to go to Israel for Mashiach as well, or survive, or whatever it is. So Hashem is giving everyone the best opportunity to let go of, it's not about not enjoying your life and wanting your life a certain way, but that I need it to be this way. Right? I can surrender. I can whatever you want, God. That's really where a Jew's meant to live, is I'm in service to a higher power. Whatever you want, I'm serving you. My ego is not attached. And I really think, coming back to that, what does Hashem want from us? It's surrendering the ego that I know.
Right. I heard Rav Daniel Katz say something, which I just want to interject here because I think it's important, is he said, we're never here to say why something happens, but we can always say, what can we learn from it? Where can we improve? Mm-hmm. What can we do better based on what happened? To suggest why something happens is way beyond the...
And that's the beauty of the Hebrew language, right? Lama means why. And lama, if you break it up differently, is lama. So for what? For what purpose? So exactly. What am I, that's what I go into. What am I meant to learn from this? What does God want from me? And the only thing I can come to is that I'm meant to let go of needing it to make sense. Because this doesn't make sense.
Right.
It's senseless. And that's the place where we have to surrender that and say, well, with all the other evidence I see of God and who he is and who he's been in my life, I can trust that you have a bigger picture, and I can't understand this. I cannot understand this. I cannot make sense of it. Of how I believe we're in the middle of a story, Megillah Esther. We're in the dark. It's leading up to something good. But we're in the dark right now.
Right.
And in the dark is the chance that you can experience a jackpot moment. A jackpot moment is where you hit the jackpot and you exponentially can grow in your spiritual growth because you're in the dark and because it's so hard. And I really feel that's the opportunity for all of us right now, is to we're pulsating between freak out, or maybe you're not, but everyone else is. But a lot of people are. Between freak out, anxiety, and then I trust Hashem, I'm relying on Hashem, he's in charge, and then people are pulsating back and forth.
No, meaning I just want to be clear about my position, right? I've read a fair amount of news. I'm looking at what's going on, and there's obviously concern, but I was concerned the day before
October 7th, right.
Yeah, meaning on October 6th, Israel was not protecting its citizens. That's the fact. Anyone in the South was vulnerable to rocket fire, had to live in a way that they had to get to a shelter as soon as possible. It didn't make any sense. But for whatever reason, people
wanted to live like that.
No, they chose to live there. Some of them for ideological reasons, some of them because they ignored the actual threat. But the fact of the matter is that Israel wasn't saying that we are going to protect our citizens in the appropriate way. So now we just found out to the what extent, right? What the extent of that is.
Right.
But it was there before. They were tolerating and what. I mean, just think about it in any other country. I mean, if you just did the mental exercise of imagining citizens in America being okay with a nation state within 2 miles of less than 2 miles of its borders, within, on its border, building up this kind of infrastructure, and at the same time attacking in different ways.
Right.
We would say America is not protecting its citizens. So Israel was not protecting its citizens. It was much more concerned with what CNN and BBC had to say than with actually doing its job. People keep talking about, for years, there was this expression of Israel's right to defend itself. Israel doesn't have a right to defend itself. It has a responsibility to defend itself. This language is nonsense. And just getting into that whole argument was totally ridiculous and was feeding into, I don't understand anyone who sits there arguing with people who disagree with with Israel's responsibility to defend itself. I don't.
It's a waste of energy.
Why do I have to prove it? We wouldn't do it with our own children. Why would we?
Right.
Why would we do it? Let me find out what the neighbor thinks about me making sure my child has a bed to sleep in and can sleep soundly. And then now going, people say Israel has a PR campaign. The problem is it thinks it has to do PR. It doesn't have to do PR. Just protect its citizens. Take care of what needs to be taken care of. If you sit there and ask for someone's opinion, you're going to get it. But if you don't ask for someone's opinion, they won't give it. Just do what you have to do.
The other part of that, I think, is that they're also trying to be careful of a world war. So trying to balance, temper the threats that it's going to escalate.
We're talking about now. Right now, we've allowed something to kind of like metastasize. Right, this is cancer that's all over, and both in the idea, which is global, and then in terms of the force, which is very powerful within Gaza itself. And we're showing that. Right, we're 3 weeks in, and they're still throwing rockets. It's like, wow.
Yeah, it's a lot of rockets.
Yeah, it's like it just keeps coming, and Israel's like, yeah, they bombed this, they bombed that, they bombed this, but somehow it's still rockets being fired. So obviously they've built up a fairly powerful army in that place. And now we're talking about something else. What I'm talking about is, going back 20 years ago, 30 years ago, or even, right when they left Gaza, at those stages, to sit there and argue about Israel's right to defend itself. Well, we don't have rights, we have responsibilities, and take care of it.
I like that, yeah.
Right, that's what I mean. What I mean is that almost nothing surprised me here. Literally almost nothing surprised me here. The only thing was, I also was shocked, like how did it take 8 hours for there to be a proper response? How were people sitting in a safe room calling and no one showing up? Like that was the surprising aspect, meaning the idea we knew that Israel does not do enough to protect its citizens, and the extent is what we found out was, oh wow, okay, I didn't realize, like I knew I was unhealthy, I didn't realize I'm that unhealthy,
Right.
Something like that. But it wasn't, I guess what you're saying that there was a level of denial
There's denial,
that existed, and the denial was
sure.
shattered.
for sure.
So is that a bad thing for denial to be shattered?
No.
No.
I don't think so. But we're left with the fallout now.
Yeah, sure.
And what do we do with that? And I guess that's the area I feel I can help.
Right.
And that's my area of battle. There's different battlefields at once, right? There's the battlefield physically, and there's the battlefield spiritually.
The inner one.
The inner one.
Okay.
And so we are responsible for fighting that battle. And I
Okay,
think
so that's what you're attempting to do.
that's what I'm, yeah.
It's a call to arms for the inner war.
Yes.
Okay.
And that we have to, the inner world and the inner war will be reflected on the physical level. We know it's all connected. It's all connected.
Right.
Physical reflects spiritual on many different planes, right? All at once, always with the physical body, right? We know this. So too on the macro. And so too on the macro, we're fighting for unity right now, to be unified, because we know that's what fights this war. So too internally, we want to have unity. So what does that mean? It means there's certain parts of ourselves we push into gullus. There's certain parts of ourselves we excommunicate. I don't want to know about it. I'm rejecting certain aspects of myself. Subconsciously, we do this all the time.
Right.
It's not acceptable, or I don't want to know, or it was in the past, there's a wound, there's a pain, and I'm ignoring it. And I think now is.
Can we put some meat on that bone a little bit? Can you give an example of someone who's pushing out a part of themselves in a way that you're talking about?
Yeah, so I deal with a lot of women, and they're people pleasers. So they often, what does that mean? It means I want to keep everyone happy at the expense of myself. I'd rather take the hit.
Okay.
So very common with women. Usually people pleasing is actually a type of control, that I feel very scared of conflict, so I'm going to make everyone happy so there's peace, so I don't have to deal with my fear. But it's a type of control. I'm controlling the environment.
Right, to make sure everyone is pleased. So
Everyone's
that
pleased, I'm safe, I'm good, right?
Yeah.
Rather than I actually will speak up for what I need and want at the threat or the risk of conflict.
Right, so basically they're transferring the external conflict internally.
Well, they'd rather do that and
Right.
abandon themselves. I
Right.
would call it abandonment.
Which will create an inner conflict.
Pain,
Yeah.
suffering, yeah. And
Meaning there's kind of two choices. Either there's going to be conflict, right? Because person A and person B disagrees with each other.
right.
So
normal.
either I can abandon myself, and then person B and person A appear to agree, And now the conflict is internal.
Exactly.
You know,
Right.
why didn't you stand up for yourself? And now that,
Well, some of these women don't even ask themselves that. That's what I mean by it. Some of them don't even experience
it's that.
conflict. Oh, yeah.
they don't experience it as conflict.
They're just like, they will just suffer until something else gives at some other point. Either they get sick or they explode. Usually they don't explode, they'll internalize.
Right, that's
So-
assuming the kid's not crying anymore because you put him in the basement.
Right,
Right, okay.
exactly. You gave up.
There's a line in a movie I saw. It said, "Kids are like emotions. You don't want them driving the car, but you don't want them in the trunk either." Right. So it's kind of okay.
Exactly.
Right. So you're saying in this way, it's like putting certain things in the trunk and saying, "Okay, I can't hear its cry, so it's not crying anymore." But obviously, it's
Yeah,
still
we're
crying.
good at suppression. We're very good.
Very good at it.
Very good at it.
Yeah.
So people do that, and then they abandon themselves, and I mean, they're not even owning who they are, you know. And then I've had even women that I've worked with who are dating guys based on what family want, and they're ignoring what they need and what they want because they are not in touch with it, or if they are, they just don't know how to bring that into reality. And so
So when you say abandoning who they are, you mean neglecting their needs, their wants, their desires, their preferences.
they're either not in touch with it to begin with because it's so suppressed. If they are in touch with it, they don't have the courage to ask for it,
Understood.
to bring it into relationship, to express it. And they're scared of what might happen if they do. They don't want to rock the boat.
Okay, so you would call this, so say someone has a desire for something and they're neglecting that for the sake of peace, then they're putting that part of themselves that has this desire in gullus.
Yes.
That's what you're saying.
Yes. Meaning they're just, pushing it away. And
Excellent.
that creates division internally.
Sure, yeah.
So what I've seen the opposite happen is that when they're working on themselves, let's say, in a process with me, they will start to validate and own who they are, how they feel, and start vocalizing it, even if it's to themselves in a loud, like to me or to someone else, and then boom, their husband walks into their life. Crazy. As soon as they shifted internally and owned it, even if they didn't say anything to their parents, now they've got a keli, a vessel
Right.
for it.
Absolutely.
And so that's what I feel that we're really doing. If I had to like create one phrase of what I think we all need to be doing now, wherever we're at in life, it's about building that vessel.
Understood.
Building that vessel, and that vessel is a vessel for light, for God
Right.
in the world. However you do that.
Right, creating internal unity. So the way that would manifest, and when you're talking about unity, you're talking about Jewish unity, global unity, what are you talking about?
Unity within, you're saying?
No, when you're talking about unity you said just like we're fighting for unity on the outside, we're fighting for unity on the inside.
So it has to start with the Jewish people,
Oh, so you're talking about Jewish people, okay.
firstly, and then we should go to the world.
Right, so the same way we would say, let's say about a Jew who has a different opinion than us, they're not Jewish, right? So we kind of like, boom, exile them. They're no longer part of the people.
Yeah, we do that all the time.
Yeah, we do it all the time.
Exactly. Judgment. But you can only judge someone else positively, favorably, if you have that relationship here. It's a mirror. It's all a mirror. We don't see
Right.
things the way they are. We see things the way we are. It's a mirror. So it's very nice that people say, oh, I've got to work on judging favorably. I've got to work on seeing people with a good eye. I've got to work on my speech. I've got to work. Yes, but it's so much harder to do that if you're not working here first. Because if you work here first, then that becomes much easier. It's an extension. So I think that we overlook this in the Jewish world a lot of the time. It's very focused on chesed, which is beautiful, and praying, which is beautiful. But the bigger vessel you have here, the more you can give to someone else and to God. And people, it's funny, they finish the course and they'll go, my praying got better. Like, so weird. Like, no, it's not weird. It's just that you become bigger. You're a bigger vessel. And then when you're a bigger vessel, you can connect more authentically, more real with yourself, with others, with Hashem. And that's what I feel like we're being asked to do now, as well as surrender this ego of, I need to know. I need to understand everything that's happening. I need to, a lot of people who are control freaks right now are really freaking out because it's very clear we're not in control. So like you said, but we were always never in control.
Right.
But we didn't a lot of people don't realize that. Right, don't realize that they weren't in control because Hashem was so nice. He let us all believe that for a while.
Right. So when I say always in control, I'm not at that place that, I don't believe that at all. What I was more saying related to the state of Israel and the way it was doing things, that a lot of these things were very obvious. Where the
Right.
world was at.
Right.
To me, I see it, there's a number of people who are willing to fire a rocket at Israel and a number of people who are willing to tell Israel not to defend itself. And they both have the same stated goal. I don't, right? And I've always known that because I've seen the rallies, right? I've seen these things before. That's all I was saying. Not that, not that I've reached some sort of state that.
Oh,
yeah.
you might have.
No, if my food is not hot enough, I'm not happy. So yeah, no.
I hear.
Yeah.
We've all got this work to do, and I think that everything's been accelerated in the last few weeks. It's very clear that Hashem wants us focusing on this now.
Right.
On what is it I need to work on, and to take time out of your day, even though we're busy and you have work, and take time out of your day to really extra prayers, extra work, and then doing stuff for the Jewish people and the soldiers and your community, and all that stuff should still continue. But I think this piece is left out, which is, how can I be more connected? I guess connection is connected to unity.
Right.
So connection here, connection with others, and connection with God, that leads to the world of connection, which is that Hashem Echad.
Yeah, ironically, it did lead to a lot of unity, at least in the short term.
It did.
Yeah.
So much. And I think that's why I haven't heard of any civilian deaths in Israel since we galvanized that type of support. Have you? I think the fact that they're sending thousands of rockets, we're fighting on every front right now, or at least I think 3, and there's been no civilian deaths is miraculous already. And I see that as a reflection of the unity that's already been shown. Right. And that should give us strength.
Do you think that's going to stay? The unity?
No, the unity, I think that that should give us strength to continue with everything we've been doing and not to slack off, because I think the risk is complacency now.
Right, that we can go back to that place. Well, I think, if you think about it, likely, naturally, the war is going to be drawn out for a while. And usually when that happens, people go back to the positions they had before. So those who are anti-war may go there. Those who think you have to, get every Arab out of the country, to go there, and just instead of recognizing that all of those important, not important, pale in comparison to the need for, being on the same page, treating a Jew like a Jew.
Yeah.
Like a family member, not sitting there and...
Like a family member, right? And that's the concept of one of the other things I heard recently was that one of the ways we can fight with unity is to carry our fellow Jew like he's like a family member. Nosei ba'ol, carrying the burden of your friend. And when I actually carry the burden of my friend as if it's me or my family, so it says that we're all in pain, like I'm carrying the pain as well. Mm-hmm. And that is an act of unity. And it says actually in a Gemara in Sanhedrin that when a Jew's in pain, God feels the pain. More Jews in pain, God feels more of the pain and can't handle it in a way, so to speak. Mm-hmm. And it demands a response spiritually. So it is a real approach to say the more we all are in pain together about what's going on, the more it will demand a spiritual response from God, and that we shouldn't give up on that. We shouldn't put the burden down and just go back to our lives. That we should say, look, God, look how much pain we're in. Right. You have to do something. We're relying on you. And when you put the problem on God's shoulders, so to speak, we're out of control. We don't know. We can't do anything. I can't do anything. I feel completely helpless and powerless. It's terrifying. Right. And the more we throw that on as far as a real, it's in the heart.
So you're saying not to go to a place of abandoning the burden. Feel it. Feel
the burden. But that itself has a huge impact spiritually. So I think we have to see how our internal world impacts spiritually right now, that they're intrinsically connected. Anxiety, interestingly, God will create situations. This is, I think it was Rav Tzadok Cohen says, God will create situations of anxiety and the unknown for us, uncertainty, so that we feel anxious, and that anxiety itself leads us to do this introspection and this work, so that then the thing that was decreed doesn't need to happen.
Oh, interesting.
So the anxiety itself is a mechanism by which we don't actually have to experience something negative.
Right. It propels us. Oh, interesting. Meaning exactly the opposite of what we think it is.
Yes. Yeah. Exactly the opposite.
It's not forewarning of something bad happening. It's preventing it. if we
that's-
follow it.
Yeah, and that's a different approach. The Stifler brings down actually that with anxiety, it can be a warning, like a hint, a tap. And because you experience the anxiety of what could really be, really it is on the cards to be, you do that inner work because of that. It motivates you to see the outcome of that, whether it's a bad dream or whether it's like a bad health diagnosis or something, God forbid, like this. And you do that, and then that thing didn't need to come to fruition.
Right.
So that can be also.
Right, meaning you were able to create the benefit of it without the reality of it.
Yes. So that's what I keep asking with this situation. Like, what is that? What do we need to get to so that that doesn't happen?
And what do you see as that? Is that the end of
World
the
War
world?
III and a Holocaust again on a global scale.
Right.
Like, which is what God warns in the Torah. Like, if the Holocausts come when we're not in the roles we should be and we're not doing... this year was the worst year of arguments, fighting, division in Israel that we've ever really seen publicly on the public stage.
Yeah, it got dirty.
Chillul Hashem.
Yeah, it got very dirty.
And then Tel Aviv on Yom Kippur was disgusting.
What was going on in Tel Aviv Yom Kippur?
The lefts versus the rights, the religious versus the anti-religious, and they have all these breakaway minions on the streets of Tel Aviv. Tel Aviv dead stops on Yom Kippur, no cars, and people came along attacking people praying, innocent people praying who were often leftists that go to shul on Yom Kippur. And they released dogs to attack people.
Really?
Yes. They threw Sidurim, they ripped up Sidurim of people, innocent people praying, and on Yom Kippur, on the day when the year is being sealed.
Jews attacking other Jews?
Yes.
Oh, wow, I didn't know this.
Crazy. And they threw them in ponds, the Sidurim, and I mean,
motivated by what?
This whole political year.
The Supreme Court stuff and the things.
The government. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, wow.
Left versus right, fighting.
Yeah, I'm not a careful follower of the news just because it's not good for anyone's brain. But I did see some of that.
True. Yeah, don't watch the news.
What?
Don't watch the news. No, really, don't watch the news. It's propaganda. Right. It's not news.
But you're saying it was the worst it's been.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's...
So. I've never heard or seen anything like that. I lived in Israel for 8 years. And
you lived in Israel for 8 years?
Mm-hmm.
Got it, yeah.
Yeah, so something needs to be corrected in a massive way, and only God has the master plan. But Hamas has no power. Hamas has no power. We give it power. It's the absence of the light. So that shows how dark and how much absence is in the world. And it's our job together to infuse light back again. The one thing they have going, I will say, is they're really lishma.
Who?
Hamas.
Oh, yeah.
They're lishma. They're doing it for the sake of God, they believe.
Right.
They have that. It's very powerful. We have to match it. We have to match it.
Right. They definitely are.
It brings merit.
Well, there's some and some. I saw an interview of one of these guys who said that he would get, for every hostage he brought back, he would get $10,000 in a house.
Okay,
so that wasn't so
incentivizing. It was not lishma. Actually, you're right. Good point.
That guy wasn't. But there's plenty of them who certainly are very, very, very.
They're
not only themselves, their families, like they're very on board.
Yeah, the families are happy when if their kid is a martyr.
In some cases, yeah. Yeah, in too many cases.
Too many cases.
Yeah.
I mean, well, I'm saying of the terrorists, you hear, you see the
100%,
calls home, and we heard the recordings even.
Yeah,
it's considered, it's glorified. There's a brainwashing there since they were kids.
Right, but you're saying the little bit of light in there is that they're committed, they're strong, they're courageous.
And they're doing it for God, they think.
Right, yeah.
So we have to match that. We have to match, like, what are we willing to sacrifice? What are we willing to do? We have to strengthen ourselves, I think. And what can we do in the world to bring in light? There's so many ways to connect with each other and to the inner work as well. I think that is important.
Right. I guess that's maybe that's the part that, even though maybe I know it intellectually, but maybe that I'm a little denial about, is just how bad it actually is. Meaning the fact that, because it feels comfortable.
What does?
The world feels comfortable. I'm saying not this, forget October 7th. I'm saying a month ago, it did feel comfortable, but obviously there's a tremendous amount of darkness in the world. Like, we've gotten comfortable with, I'm saying on a spiritual level, like
Yeah.
the amount of darkness. Right? And I know it. I mean, if you think about the amount of depression, the amount of anxiety, the amount of suicide,
Right.
right? There's a lot of
The unraveling of society is happening around us.
Yeah.
And it does infiltrate the Jewish world.
Right. And even in the U.S., there's plenty of discord and disagreement and
Right.
right, like all that stuff with Trump. I mean, was way, way, way beyond the pale of anything we've seen with any.
Right. So, again, this is all written, a lot of this is written about that we're going to have to choose good and evil. People are going to have to choose sides. It's going to be polarized as we get closer to Mashiach, which is really a shift in consciousness. Mashiach is a person, for sure, that's coming, but it's a shift in consciousness of the world, of recognizing God. And I always wondered, like, how is God going to do that? Like, how is God going to get this world that's so far away to recognize him? And then then COVID hit, and I thought, wow, with one little bug, God shut down the whole world in a week. It was unbelievable. Unbelievable, that the awesomeness of that. And then I was like, oh, God has ways, obviously. And then now this is like rattling everyone's cage.
Right. I guess the kind of the silver lining through it all is the mass disillusionment, but disillusionment in in the positive of that getting out of the illusion of something.
Yes.
Yes.
I think that's important. And like refocusing priorities, refocusing on what am I here for?
Right. I meant it in a different way, the disillusionment. I meant it in the sense of, let's say in the U.S., right, through COVID and through everything else, is definitely the sense that there's some people somewheres making decisions that have a tremendous amount of power and not necessarily to our individual benefit. We're much more at risk than we thought. Mm-hmm. Not everyone is. There are some other competing interests. When every single news station is saying the same thing, and then one person gets up and says something, and that person is silenced. When there's so much unknown, right? Why would you silence anyone? Let everyone talk. We don't know anything, but we were so quick to censor this person and that person and that.
Yeah.
Right. So like those things were like, whoa, is there as much freedom here as we think? Well,
less and less in the last few years.
It's freedom. Well, when the freedom we have is granted by someone, that means we don't have freedom because they can take it away. So, and we've seen a lot of those things we thought were there. I mean, the U.S. dollar, it crumbled in the last. We mentioned the word inflation, but someone who a lot of their security was dependent on how much money they had saved up. Their bell was rung.
Detach.
Yeah.
This doesn't. It's like, where do we give our power? Where do we give our reliability to make us feel okay? And one is money, one is a job, and so jobs all fell away in COVID. A lot of jobs got restructured.
Yeah, social life, a lot of that was.
Social life got restructured. Money got restructured. Like everything God is stripping away everything to show you it's not this. Doesn't mean he's going to take it away permanently, but it's not this.
Right.
This is not giving you security. I mean, that's what we sit in the sukkah for.
For what?
Experientially, we sit in a sukkah every year to show us that nothing is permanent except God.
Oh, okay.
It's a house that is flimsy, so that don't get your safety, don't get your security from your house. Don't get it from anything physical. It's all God. Like we want to see the sky through the schach because we want to know that it's really God that's giving me the security. And we were trying to build that from the inside out over the high holidays. That's what it's about, right? Rosh Hashanah is planting the seed of, I want you to run my world, God. You're my melech. That's what that means. Let go, let God. That's what Rosh Hashanah is about. And Yom Kippur is like, okay, now I'm going to correct things in my vessel to make sure I can channel it. And then Sukkah is I go out and celebrate with God and realize that only you're the only one that's making me secure and making me feel. What do
you make of the fact that this attack happened on Simchas Torah? Do you make anything of that? Because like Yom Kippur thematically made sense, like the Yom Kippur War, right? The theme of it, right?
Oh,
it's like a serious day. I'm just wondering, if you had any thoughts on that. It's like the most joyous day, and then something like this.
How many people even are aware of it? How many Jews are aware of that?
Of Simchas
Torah? How many Jews really take Simcha in the Torah? Proportionately.
Right.
Like I'd never heard of it. I became observant at 30.
Oh, and you didn't hear about it before?
Never even heard of it.
You didn't even know it was
And I don't think I'm abnormal. I was abnormal as a secular Jew. So
understood.
Simchas Torah is lovely, but if no Jews are acknowledging what Simchas Torah is, or it's a very, very, very small percentage who are genuinely besimcha. I mean, again, I don't think that's the reason what do I know? It's Hashem's cheshbon, but I don't know.
Right. So
I don't know if it matters that it was on that day and what that might mean, except that it was, I think they did that actually that day was because it was the anniversary of the Yom Kippur War in the English calendar.
Right, the English calendar was the
same.
anniversary. Right, but
How it fell out that
you're giving
way.
everything a meaning on a spiritual level. I was wondering if you connected anything to Simchas Torah, but obviously anything can happen anytime.
I don't know, but what I'm worried about is that all of this stuff and like trying to work it out and work out how the idea failed, and it's interesting, but it's also
A distraction.
Not powerful. It's a distraction.
That's what you feel like.
I really do, especially watching the news, because we watch the news to feel connected, to feel like we know what's going on, so we kind of have some sense of control. But it's an illusion again. There's no control there. And so I think coming back to, again, us and focusing on the thing that releases the most light into the world, the most light to fight this darkness, is really relying on God. Like you're in control. You know what's happening, and you can stop this in a second.
So what's interesting about this, about what you're saying is, what you're sharing is essentially, this has been your life view from before this happened.
Well, I went through it single, so that's why I was saying it's ironic that there's a parallel here in the singles test.
Go ahead.
So being single is nowhere near, it's not life and death like this. But there's such a darkness, there's such a despair that you're battling when you're single and you're older and it's not happening and you don't know why, and you're dealing with everyone's judgment, So what's the test? The test is trusting in the dark. You're in the dark, you don't know if it's going to happen, and you have to trust God. And the thing that's going to get you out of it is that. I just had someone who's getting engaged tonight as we speak. And she's in the middle of the course. And I said, what was it for you? What was the shift? She said, honestly, it was that conversation we had about trusting God. And I've been working on that every day since. And I really felt I shifted in trusting God. And then my husband walked into my life.
Right. Isn't that interesting?
In a second, everything can change if we just do that.
So you know what's funny? So the reason I started this podcast or these conversations is that when COVID hit, I was seeing a lot of people freaking out.
Yeah.
And I wasn't freaking out. There were things I was dealing with that were a huge deal. My wife had just gotten pregnant. The beginning stages of it were very difficult physically and emotionally for her, for our family. She got pregnant, I think, in February of 2020 is when we found out. So right as COVID was hitting, we were dealing with that. Plus, obviously on the business side, our business was going through all sorts of changes and a lot of unknowns. So I had a lot practically I was dealing with. And normally at the time, we had 2 young children. My wife, I had a son who was 2, a daughter who was 1, and then my wife was pregnant.
Oh, wow.
And typically, the way we're used to in our life is we have a fair amount of support and help, right? I'm able to work, and it makes this much more manageable. Here, obviously with COVID, very limited who you can have. We had a little bit, but not to the extent I'm used to, and also dealing with all of that, and at the same point in time, dealing with the work stuff. So practically, I was dealing with my fair share, but I wasn't freaking out. I sat with the company and said, listen, our job is to survive this. It's not about making a ton of money. It's not about anything else. Our job is to just somehow how to figure out how to survive COVID. If we survive COVID, then we should be okay, because not everyone will. So, meaning there was a levelness about it. And as I was talking to people, I was wondering, why is that? Why am I more comfortable than others? And my thought process was that I already went through this. When I began my journey on recovery from addiction, I had to be willing to strip away those things that were most important to me.
Yes.
So in the process, I learned how to live without the things that were most important to me. And not that these things weren't super important. They were, my house and my life and my job and everything else. But I'd already once seen I can do that. So if I have to do it again, I'm not excited about it. It's not exciting. It's not a walk in the park, but I knew it was possible. I wasn't freaking out to the end of the earth. I was like, okay, I want to save my business, but if it doesn't happen, I'll still be able to look at myself in the mirror and recognize myself. I want to save these things, but there's not going to be a total loss of identity, which is what it often feels like for a lot of people. So towards that end, I said, hey, let's have a conversation. Let me launch one. Recovery is generally anonymous. Right? You have Alcoholics Anonymous. That's what it's called. So I was like, hey, maybe we can do away with some of the anonymity for a while. Not completely, not to shatter it, but bring some of these ideas out to the public. And I hosted an online webinar called Let Go and Let God. And different, I think it was old, rabbis or other thinkers in the Jewish community who have some knowledge or understanding of recovery joined the webinar, and that was our first conversation. We had a good response, so let's do another one. Then eventually we said, hey, if I'm already doing it, why not put it on a podcast? So we started hosting it, and one thing led to another, and now we're here. But my point is, in all of that, is that the conclusion that I made from COVID was a conclusion I'd already made previously, which is that recovery has valuable things to teach me in the world. It just kind of reinforced it in a much larger way. The conclusion you seem to have made from what happened in Israel is that the inner game is very important, but you always knew that.
This is like turning up the heat.
Exactly.
Massive.
Exactly.
And not just the inner game, but the inner game and connection with God. You have to do both fronts. They're both battlefields.
Right.
Different levels, different things. Some people are really good at focusing on God. Some people are really good at focusing on here. We have to do both.
Right. Essentially, when they say, when you get squeezed, you find out what you're full of.
Exactly.
Right. So this is what you're full of. What you're full of is this idea that inner game is very important, that the spiritual world magnifies the inner world.
And that whatever's inside is as a vessel is what you bring to your relationship with others and to your relationship with God.
Right.
So you have to work here so that you can improve Bein Adam L'Chavero and your relationship with God. Bein Adam L'Makom. But without this, you can't do it. And people skip this step. I've seen it a lot.
Right.
They skip it. They focus on others, they focus on God. And
I think most people assume when it says that our job is to bring light to the world. Right. That's
right. But you can't do that if you're not light. If you're not full of light.
Well, there's that. It's the world. You had started saying there's a universe inside of us.
Yes.
That's the world that we're responsible to bring light to. The rest of the world may or may not live without us, but we'll never live without us.
Yes.
Yeah.
And what popped into my mind when you're saying that you went through this is that you learnt to have a sense of internal self-definition. When you strip away all those outside things,
right.
I'm defining myself within, and this is where you get to see, what defines me.
Right. Several years after getting sober, I nearly lost my business, and it was more than my business. I mean, nearly lost everything. And that was also a life-defining moment. Will I recognize myself in the mirror without a certain amount of money in my pocket? And for a full year and a half, I didn't know if I would or could, and it was an extremely trying period. But also, like in hindsight, some of the most fulfilling and rewarding. Yeah.
Yeah. That's what happened to me when I went to Israel at 30. So 30 years old, and I was in a peaking career that obviously defined me, which I didn't realize, which was on the Today Show, which was the same show that is here, and we copy you with everything in Australia. And, I'd walk into a room and people would be like, oh, you're the Today Show psychologist. Oh, like their whole face would change. And that gave me some sort of recognition and feeling good. And then when I realized I had to go to Israel because I knew I was Jewish and I knew that was meant to be for some reason, I just have no clue what that means. My brother was becoming more observant, and I freaked out. I showed up in Israel, walked off the Today Show. People thought I was crazy. I also thought maybe I'm a bit crazy, and sat down with 20-year-olds in the classrooms in a school in Israel to learn Judaism. It was very stripped. Like, who am I if I'm not on that show? Who am I if I'm not a psychologist? Who am I if I'm not? So all those layers were also stripped away, and I was living in a SEM dorm room, no air conditioning in Israel in the summer, on these little flimsy beds. So the gashmias, all the physicality was stripped away. And I lived like that for a long time. I was there for 5 years, mostly on and off, but pretty solid 5 years in that situation. And it was the best thing ever, even though it built me inside.
Right, it was tough, but it made you who you are, right?
Yeah, and I think that wherever people can get those situations and opportunities, it's a good thing. I don't think people choose it. I think it happens to you. No one actively says, I want to let go of everything I know.
No, it has to be.
It has to be.
It has to be forced out of someone.
Yeah, and that's what's happening now on some level.
Right.
there's that comfort, that safety, that illusion, that control, that.
Right. Where I was going with the thought is that, let's say not everyone is freaking out, meaning not everyone is
No.
afraid. I'm hearing some people who want to kill everyone, right? Meaning, so there are different emotions that are coming out of people. Some people are horrified beyond the pale. Some people are feeling a level of revenge and vengeance, that I thought only Hamas was capable of. But you have different things. And what I'm saying is that really what this is a squeezing, and then you find out what's inside, and then what becomes more relevant is to go back inside.
Mm-hmm. Nice.
Right.
Yeah, I like that. The squeezing.
That's what you're right. That's what it is.
We're being squeezed.
Because when someone goes into panic, they are so sure that the only logical conclusion is panic, that oftentimes they're like, yeah, of course I'm afraid. Look what just happened. Well, not of course, because here's 100 people who all experience the same thing. And again, I'm not talking about the people directly impacted. That's a completely different.
Right.
I'm talking about the people observing. One person is freaking out. They're terrified. They can't sleep at night.
Mm-hmm.
The other person, wants to kill. The other person is completely disgusted by everything. Oh, it's disgusting. I can't believe, right? They just all focus on the disgusting aspects of it. Maybe I'll be repeating the same thought, but there's David Hawkins has this concept of like the energetic levels of different emotions.
Mm-hmm. Power versus force.
So in Power versus Force, so he gives an analogy. I don't know if you remember it. You read the book, obviously.
Yeah.
So he talks about passing a beggar on the street and how different people, depending on where they are, will come to a different conclusion about the beggar, right? So his lowest level emotion, it considers shame, right? So if someone's, call it vibrating at the level of shame, they'll see a beggar and find them disgusting and repulsive and hard to look at, right? Because that's what they see. If someone's vibrating at the level of guilt, then they'll say, "Oh, I'm sure he deserves it. He must have had it coming. He must have done certain things." Above that, I think he has, let's say, apathy. There's whatever, just walk past.
Yeah.
There's the wall. There's a homeless person. They blend into each other. Another person may be at the level of fear. I say, oh, wow, this is scary. This homeless person could be dangerous. Let me walk across the street. Someone else had anger, right? So I'll look at it and say, I can't believe the city lets this. Like, this is crazy, right? So whatever is going on. And then as higher level emotions, whether it's acceptance, it's like, okay, those are his choices. These are my choices. And, there's different, meaning, like you said, it's not, we're saying, we don't see the world the way it is. We see it the way we are. But someone who's passing the homeless person and is afraid assumes that everyone would be afraid.
Yes.
But it's not the homeless person, it's us.
It's us.
We're sitting at the level of fear. So a lot of people are finding out, they've been squeezed, all of us, and we're finding out what's inside.
What's inside.
Right.
And now the opportunity and the challenge is to look at it without judgment.
Right. What's there?
What's there, not, oh my gosh, I can't believe that I'm feeling this way.
Right. And then work through that.
And work through it. Yeah. That's the opportunity.
One of the nicest things I liked, just going back to David Hawkins, that I liked about his work, so he has a scale of what he considers like the more life-affirming emotions, right? So shame is the least life-affirming because, shame at the bottom levels could lead to suicide, right?
Mm-hmm.
Enlightenment is the highest levels because that believes in eternal life, there's no death, right? So, and then in between that, there's different levels. So let's say it kind of, the break-even point, he has a courage. That's like when someone is living a life with courage, the boldness just to take a step forward, act in the face of fear, then that's kind of where everything opens up. Mm-hmm. But, we're kind of taught, like within Judaism, there are many messages, let's say anger is bad, fear is bad, but it depends where you're coming from. I mean, compared to apathy, fear is quite good.
Right.
Compared to fear, anger is quite good. Compared to anger, pride's quite good. Right, so it
goes up in levels of consciousness.
Right, and then eventually kind of hits a higher level. But you had mentioned seeing it without judgment. I found this scale really, really nice to be able to look at it without judgment. It's like, yes, I'm not at the place in the ladder I want to be. But I'm not I'm not at the bottom of the rung either, right?
Right. And you can see where you are and that it's all real and valid. So the key is in that, by the way, his second book or the other book, the most latest book, Letting Go,
Okay.
Pathway to Surrender, is actually a prerequisite reading for my course. That
Really?
It is one of the best books that I have ever read. And I say that very lightly.
Okay, I'm going to read it. I have it. I haven't read it, but I really enjoyed Power versus Force.
You have to read this book because he's grown in himself since he wrote the first book, which was a decade or more ago. And he's not alive anymore. He passed away. But you read through this book, Letting Go, he's really holding there himself. And the clarity with which he writes goes straight in. And what he really shows is that it's the acceptance of whatever's going on in you from a place, I interpret as my words, from a place of witness. Right. Witness consciousness, or we call it soul mode, neshama mode, whatever you want to call it, is what allows it to transform. Because when you observe yourself without judgment, and that's the key, just saying, isn't that interesting?
Right.
I feel this, or isn't that interesting? Tell me more about
Curiosity.
it. Curiosity, compassionate curiosity. Then creating a vessel within yourself for this space inside of you for it to shift. It doesn't want to stay there, that level.
I think it was Dov Ber-Pinson. I don't know if you know him, Rabbi Dov Ber-Pinson. He's wrote a number of books on very interesting topics. So I spoke with him a little while ago. And in it, I think he compared das, the level of das, to the word aid, witness. That when we're at the level of das, like that highest level, we're witnessing versus being in it. Yeah. The observer versus
the observer.
The subject versus the object.
Right. And but to allow yourself to be subject whilst you're being objective. It's not being analytical, because sometimes people escape into their intellect to analyze, but that means they disconnect from themselves. So this is the other way. This is like, I'm going to allow myself to feel connected, and I'm going to access the observer part of me. Right. To do that. And
I am afraid my body is feeling fear. Like, wow, it's interesting. My heart is pounding, and it's freaking out. I wonder why that is. Right.
Right. Exactly.
Right. Or even I'm experiencing, wow, it's like my body is experiencing a tremendous amount of jealousy right now. Like, what's going on?
Right, and just allowing that. And then if you allow it and can actually sit with it, which is a big if, because I think the majority of people, a lot of people that I come across are scared of that.
Right, especially if we identify with it.
If it's me.
Right, then it's like, I'm jealous. I
can't be jealous. And then there's the judgment. So that's what he talks about in this book. There's 3 ways that you keep yourself stuck. You judge yourself, you suppress or repress emotion, and you escape. And as long as you're doing one of those 3, you're stuck. It's a type of self-rejection.
Let's say it again. So we judge ourselves, suppress,
and escape.
Or escape.
Into whether it's addictions, whether it's workaholism, shopping, eating.
Oh, that's very interesting. Right.
Very interesting. And once you see it that way, you're like, yeah, I can. Let me just sit with whatever's going on. Let me just observe it and be with it and know that's not me.
Right. Can we accept it?
Can I just allow it? And I really do think that a lot of our resistance to moving forward in life, in general, if we want to go macro, separate to the war, right? A lot of our fear, resistance of moving forward into the next step, whether that's marriage, which is the area I focus on, although I do work with married women, and them moving into the next level of their life, whether it's a direction because the kids are all out of the house or whatever, that's the stuff we have to process inside of us. We have to look at it. We have to see where's the fear coming from. It could be coming from self-limiting beliefs from the subconscious. It could be coming from wounds. It could be, we've got to look at that. Take a look. That's part of what I think tikkun is, so that you can keep growing.
Right. 100%.
But if you can't sit with yourself, if you keep yourself busy constantly, if you're not at home in your skin, if you're scared of feelings, we're not taught this at school, then you will spend your life running from yourself.
Right. Yeah, it's a practice to develop the self-compassion, to see the parts about ourselves we don't like.
How did you develop that?
I'm sure there's still parts that I'm not comfortable looking at. I think like anyone else, right? It's an infinite game. I had the thought recently that if chess is an infinite game, then probably life is an infinite game too. So, so there's there's definitely levels, and there's unending levels to this. But when I've done it, I kind of had no choice, especially around, I was trying to recover from sex addiction. And I joked that with sex addiction, the 2 things I was most attached to was work and sex. Like, those were my attachments. And I would joke that, I got the best and the worst addictions, because the work addiction is celebrated.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm escaping into it. I'm doing it way more than I could or should. I'm not enjoying the money. I'm just, working and working and working. And when I wasn't, I had the sexual escape, which was, for the most part, looked down upon, right? Kind of the lowest. When you talk about the pride people have for their addictions, right? The sexual addictions will be on the lowest and the work addiction on the highest. And then, drugs and alcohol kind of in between, where some people's war stories, oh, I woke up on the side of the road, after getting, drinking a ton of alcohol. Like, there could be some excitement there, but you don't hear that stuff with the sexual addictions.
Right.
You don't. And you may hear people talk like pride, right? Sometimes men will talk with certain pride about how many women they've been with, but the real addiction stuff, there isn't pride when telling those stories. Right. There's a lot of shame. And just being able to, in order to hear, I just had to be able to look at those things I did, and just like, hey, and I projected a lot of that outwards for a while. I did stuff with Jewish Community Watch, which was focused on combating child sex abuse, and it was easy for me to stand in this righteousness that I hadn't done that sexually. But over time, I realized that some of the judgment I was taking out on others for their sexual behaviors was knowing that my own house wasn't in order on this front. And it was convenient for me to say I hadn't crossed that line. Mm-hmm. Okay, but I crossed.
This was in recovery or before?
This was in recovery.
In recovery.
In recovery.
Yeah.
Yeah. It started with, but before then I had to work through some trauma of being sexually abused and some of that other stuff. And they were uncomfortable, but it's much easier to look at ourselves as the victim than the perpetrator, so to speak, in life.
Sure.
So going through some of those and seeing how I had a fair amount of trauma and pain, and then slowly start saying, oh, wow, this thing in my life is connected to what happened to me. And now sometimes you'll watch a kid and you see they're going through something, whether it's their parents or, let's say parents going through a terrible divorce or losing a parent or a sibling or something like that. That kid is set up for a challenge later in life. You just see it. So they may hate themselves when they're 30 years old and like, why, I can't believe I have this issue. But someone on the outside is like, I saw it coming. I know the life you lived when you were 5, 6, 7 years old. Of course you were going to have things to work through. So I think once I came to that realization that a lot of the stuff I'm dealing with, I was set up to deal with. It wasn't me. Of course, you're going to, water a plant with dirty water. At some point in time, it's going to have to purge the dirt. It got the water, but it's got to purge the dirt. So being able to separate from it a little bit. But it was mostly out of necessity. I think that every once in a while people are faced with, do I want to live with constant panic attacks or do I want to look at this? Right.
Well, the panic attacks, I feel, are sometimes just signals or indicators for looking at the deeper stuff.
They certainly are, yeah.
Yeah. Before, when you mentioned you didn't want to face that part of you that was it's easier to be the victim than the perpetrator.
Yeah.
So that would be an example of putting part of yourself into gullus.
Which? The perpetrator.
Yeah. I don't want to know about that part. Right. But then really when you face it and can look at it, you're free.
Yes. And by perpetrator, what I mean is those places, those situations in life where we hurt someone else.
Yeah. We all do that.
100%.
Yeah. And so.
Yeah, we're all someone's.
We're all everything.
Paro. Yeah, exactly.
So when I own that part of myself, it's no longer in the dark and it's no longer playing out to hurt someone. Or playing out in the sense of for dating, blocking your husband from coming to you because you can't own a part of yourself that you need to show up with.
Right.
And if you married someone from that state, it wouldn't be good for you. And God knows that. So he's waiting for people to develop themselves. And I see that as a very clear line, for example, between singles with that there's the singles who need to develop outside of marriage. So as opposed to being judged that there's something intrinsically wrong with you because you're single, which drives me crazy because it's just not true. Most of the women I work with are phenomenal people, developed, self-aware, wonderful people.
But you're saying before the unity in the marriage to take place, there needs to be the internal unity.
For some people, there needs to be a level of that.
Right, some people manage to skate through 19
Correct.
years old and everything is fine.
So they have to do it inside a marriage.
Exactly.
For them, the pathway was best in marriage. And for these other people, it wasn't going to be better for them in marriage. So they have to do it outside of marriage.
Right.
In fact, not being married is the motivator for those people. Whereas someone who got married young, if they were single, they might not have been able to handle it. God knew that. God knows everything. So
Right.
it's
But
just
that's you
different.
saying the trust comes in. It just goes back to
Yes, the trust in the darkness, the trust that my life is single by design, not by punishment.
there is one who knows it's not us. Right.
Yeah, and we have to learn to build that trust.
Accept reality.
Trust and acceptance of what is doesn't mean it's going to be the same in the future. So that's the work. That's the inner game.
Yeah.
Use your line.
I think it was yours, but it's essentially a call to action. That's what this has been for you. So, okay, we're sending people to the front lines there in Israel. Let's send people to the front lines here.
Yeah, I'm happy to
We need more people doing
help the army here,
right.
you know,
Do
and
that,
including
yeah.
myself. I'm talking to myself. All of
No,
this
we
is-
all have this.
right.
Yeah, we all have this work. It's not,
Yeah,
you know. I think what do they say? If you think you found your way, you're lost.
yeah. I like that.
Right.
Who said that? Do you know?
I don't know. But
Just have to look at the next step.
someone told me, I don't know where the source for this, but he said that Moshe Rabbeinu, like what was so great about him is he went through 50,000 like levels of that's not God, that's not God, that's not God.
Ah,
Meaning because it's never God, right? We've never been able to find it, but we find something, and we're like, oh, I got it. And then the next
And you
second,
lose
it's like,
it.
it's not that.
Yeah.
It's not that. It's not
Yeah.
that. So what's so great about him is he did this 50,000 times, right? That is like, he kept knowing, unknowing, right? So it's kind of, we find something that works for like, okay, I got it. It brought me some peace, but it's not it. It's not the thing. We still have to keep going.
keep going. What's the next
Yeah.
step for you?
Yeah.
And finding, I think, people that embody that next step is important. Mentors,
Right.
some form. It's hard to learn something you've never had access to, or never seen, or never experienced, or never.
Right. Yeah, that's always a challenge is because the information will be understood very easily by those who don't need it, and those who need it will have a hard time getting it. So I guess that's your job, right? Is to, how do you say something from this place to reach someone at that place and be able to say it in a way that they can hear it?
I don't. I try to look at where they're at and say the next level from them.
Right, so I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But you can only do that if you've been through those levels yourself.
Correct. Right. Which is, I guess, why some of us are taken through the mud.
Through the mud early,
Right.
you know. You can only facilitate someone else's growth if you've done.
Right. Be the small candle in their darkness.
Right.
Right.
It's a privilege.
What?
It's a privilege.
Right.
To be able to do that work.
No, it's good. I'm actually glad we're having this conversation right after Israel because I do find a lot of people completely hijacked by it. Completely hijacked. I was thinking, we hosted this retreat a few days ago and it started October 19th, right? October 7th was the attack. And we got some people ask me whether are we still going to do it? I'm like, what should I do? Sit home all day and cry? I mean, what are we meant to do if not double down on what we thought was good before
Right.
and just do it more?
Yeah. Because you were doing meaningful, good work that a lot of people are not necessarily. They're just making ends meet, but maybe they're being called upon to do something more meaningful now.
Right, but those things that are good, I keep doing that. Like
Right.
double down on that thing. Yeah, I had a friend who was he had a birthday a few days afterwards. It was maybe a week afterwards, and he decided to cancel it. I was trying to talk him out of it, but I didn't succeed. He's not a Chabad guy, and I was like, listen, I don't know for sure. Like, there's no way the Rebbe would encourage this. That's what I told him. He didn't grow up Chabad. He's not that religious now, but he said, "You think I should have my birthday anyway?" I said, "For sure." He said, "Yeah, celebrate." I said, I don't know what you're planning on doing for the birthday, so I'm not saying like anything should go, right? If you're planning on bringing a bunch of strippers, don't do that. But if you're talking about a wholesome birthday, right? Then yeah, do it. Like you're talking about celebrating your birthday. Like if it was a good thing the day before, it's a good thing now. Go do it. The idea of us like kind of abandoning our life because of what happened. I mean, that seems like a win to the terrorists.
Yes, that's exactly. That's what they want. They want us to be paralyzed in fear. They want us to feel scared. They want us to feel connected to the evil, the terror.
Right.
Sume rava asetov. Turn away from the evil. Don't look. Don't connect there. Do good. Keep good. Connect with your goodness.
Right.
And I think that for sure is a win. It's psychological warfare. It's what they want.
Yeah, the day after Yom Tov, when it ended, I guess was 2 days after the attack. So I spent that night like reading and watching everything I could and every video. I really want to understand what happened, how it happened. And as I fell asleep, I had these horrible nightmares. And I was like, no, there's no way that this is a good thing to do. I'm not watching any more videos, any more stuff. It was clear it was part of the attack. And then I found out afterwards that these videos actually came from them.
Yes.
It was definitely part of the attack. Part of the attack.
That video. Oh, you mean to get us to watch it?
Exactly. Yeah. Part of the attack was whether they knew what they were doing or didn't know what they were doing. I don't, do they understand the psychology and how it's going to affect, or it's just,
I think they do.
Evil doing evil things. But those videos were taken by the terrorists and shared by them because, if it's all in the word, right? Terror wants to create terror.
I was terrified by watching some of that, especially with the women.
Yeah.
And I know I have other people who called me and said that their personal lives were affected from watching some of those stories, like vicarious trauma.
Yeah, we can watch. Yeah.
Real stuff. So don't watch it.
Yeah, it's not.
Read the text headlines on something, Like, this.
Yeah, for
like
sure. That's what I do now.
Israel National News has a list of headlines, but
I'll check a little to see what's going on, maybe once a day, once every other day, but no pictures, no videos, none of that.
But I just focus on what this could look like in its transformative state, meaning God reveals himself on some level through miracles and through protection of the Jews and the whole world. I start to project beyond this and say, well, what would it be like? What would it be like when everyone recognizes God? When they say there's nothing, when God reveals himself, which we know is right, before right when Mashiach comes, that's what's going to happen. So that we're going there. Like, what's that going to be like? I try and invest time into imagining that, feeling that.
Right.
What will that feel like? Let's be there already, internally.
And then
that creates the vessel for it to happen.
Right. Avoid the need of the hard stuff to get to that place.
It's not up to me how that happens. We can bring it about. It says either way. We can bring it through the suffering, or we can bring it through getting our act together and uniting and being there.
Right.
I'd rather do that.
Right. Meaning it's coming. Yeah, I guess it's a
coming
similar
either
concept.
way. We get to choose how we bring it.
Right. Do we grow through suffering, or do we find another way to grow?
Okay, we've had suffering now. We've had enough. Let's.
I get it.
We don't need more.
I agree.
So but letting yourself go there, I think mentally and emotionally around what will this feel like? What will it look like when God's more revealed and the Jewish people are united and we go to Israel? Are you ready to go to Israel?
Yeah, me, myself?
Yeah.
I got a nice,
you do. That's what I'm saying. 20%.
All right.
20% want to go.
The Friedrich Rebbe, the previous Lubavitcher Rebbe, would say, "Machda Eretz Yisrael, make it Israel, make it Israel here."
Oh.
So, I understood that to mean that but what is the idea of Israel? Is that it's like a holy land. Make this land holy too.
Yeah, until the time we're meant to be there. There's nothing that
Or
can
bring that
replace
here.
the actual Israel land itself.
I hear.
But we have to be ready to, waiting for Mashiach and having your bags packed is not a physical bag. It's the mindset of, I'm ready to go. I'm ready. I can go. So
Right. It's an interesting thought that 80% of Jews weren't ready to leave Egypt. That's pretty.
I always find this 20% rule. In Kiriv, we found around 20% become observant.
So maybe, okay, go ahead.
20% become observant. 20%, there's also 20%, there's the 80-20 with your subconscious conscious. I don't know, there's something about this 80-20 rule.
Interesting. Yeah, there's a lot of studies on it. I don't know what it is, but it's something.
Yep.
Maybe Egypt wasn't exactly the way we think it was. We hear about it as we were slaves and we were beat down and everything else, but maybe there were some aspects of it that were
comfortable.
Yeah, very, like now.
Right, but we're slaves on some level here too.
Right, there's an aspect that's much darker when we're this comfortable.
Yeah.
And it says that Egypt was the lowest level of darkness. Right, so it's like when we do the movies, right, where the guy with the whip over the guy. But, many of us willingly going to work every single day are also serving a master. We're willingly going.
We're always a slave to something. We get to choose what we want to be in service to.
That is true.
And I think that's also that's being shaken up a little bit now too.
Right. Who is your master?
Who's your master? Right.
Interesting. Okay, good. Good. Is there anything left unsaid?
Sure, but
No, I know, but I feel good about conversation. It was informative for me. Where do you learn all this stuff you learn? Like, you're reading, you're learning,
it's 20 years, 25 years of psychology, somatic psychotherapy.
But also on the Jewish side.
Oh, the Jewish side. I learnt at Neve in Israel.
Got it.
I came,
Tzedek
but when I
HaKohen,
came, oh, well, that was from books, reading. But when
reading.
I showed up at 30, so you're a different creation at that age to learn for the first time any Torah. So on
Right.
one hand, it's a handicap massively. On the other hand, there's a depth.
Everything is fresh, right?
Fresh, and you are processing it as an adult.
Right, and you're introduced to it for the first time as an adult.
As an adult with a psychological background and
Right,
trying to
there's something
understand
beautiful
it
about
from a different place. So, again, Revolba was one of my big influences early on around, like even just seeing the Jewish holidays through a spiritual lens. And
Right.
yeah,
Are there any a few Jewish books maybe you recommend for those listening and want to hear some of these ideas? And because what's interesting is, I mean, the concepts are out there, right, for those who are looking. But oftentimes when I'm sitting with a guest, their reference points are always non-Jewish sources, unless it's someone like a rabbi. Then okay, they're bringing that down. But you have the psychology background, you have the David Hawkins and others, but you're as comfortable going to Rav Wolpe or Tzedek HaKohen. So are there a few books you would recommend for those, for
so
myself,
in
for those listening?
Hebrew, Olam Hayedidus Revolba, or Shlomo Volba, Wolbe. I'm reading right now the Beis Halevi on Bitachon, which brings down a lot of these in the commentary. It brings down the Stipler, Rav Tzedek HaKohen, like
Who's the Beis Halevi?
Rav Soloveitchik.
Oh, got it. Okay, so and that's in Hebrew also.
English.
In English.
Yeah, that's great, and it's really good for now.
What is it called?
Just the Beis Halevi on Bitachon, trust. And that brings a lot of commentary down around anxiety and the psychological elements of that, which was very interesting. Letting Go, Pathway to Surrender, David Hawkins, I think is great. And I don't know. I think that's the main ones right now that come to mind. I can write a list for you.
Perfect.
After.
No, this was good. This episode is brought to you by okclarity.com. okclarity.com is the upscale version of ZocDoc for the Jewish world. It is the place for any Jew to find an excellent therapist, psychiatrist, nutritionist, or coach. And it's completely free to use. Every professional on OK Clarity is vetted and experienced in working with the Jewish community, so they understand and respect cultural nuances like Shabbos, Shidduchim, and everything in between. What I love most about the OK Clarity platform is how easy it is to use their search and filter system to find the type of professional that you are looking for. They have dozens of providers who take insurance, and you can watch an intro video of each professional to get a better sense of who they are before taking that first step to reach out, which I get. It's hard to take that first step, but many of us have found that to be so very worth it. If this sounds overwhelming, they offer a short form for you to complete, and their specialists will recommend the great professional for you, all anonymously and for free. Also, in browsing their Instagram, I found content that I loved, fun and impactful. They are also regularly hosting Instagram live sessions featuring different experts discussing pressing mental health and wellness topics and answering community questions, all anonymously and for free. So if you're not already following OK Clarity on Instagram and you're using Instagram, you definitely want to. Last but not least, if you have WhatsApp, OK Clarity has an incredible WhatsApp status with over 8,000 followers. And yes, admitted, I am one of them. Their WhatsApp is a free way to improve your mental health, and they post humor. So what do they say? Laughter is the best medicine. Side note, maybe the main note, if you're listening to this and you are a wellness professional, a nutritionist, a psychiatrist, a therapist, a coach, and you're not already on okclarity.com, here's an important reminder for you that this is a great place to be if you want to reach relevant members in the Jewish community, those who need your support and expertise. And one more thing, okclarity.com is offering discounts, or in some cases, free sessions for those impacted by the war in Israel. Reach out to them, get in touch. Addressing our mental health is the most important thing we can do, especially in difficult times.
But if anyone wants to, I know we went in and out about dating, But if anyone wants to learn more about how to get unstuck and how the subconscious is playing out in their dating, which I think, again, is not often talked about, I'm happy to post a free guide.
Okay, yeah. So we didn't go there enough. You mentioned you work with people and stuff like that. So what do you do? Who do you work with? And how does someone get in contact with you?
Yeah, so I work with mostly women. My husband does see men, but I work mostly with women, married women and single women. I focus specifically a lot on single women because that was my journey and my test.
You said you get married at 42 last time.
44.
44, okay.
Yeah, 44. And I help people. Really, it's more like a dating surgeon. I get to the root of like what's really blocking someone. So if you've been dating a while and you feel stuck and you're kind of doing the right things and you don't know why, it could be because you need to look more in here and not out there. And then I help teach you how to do that for yourself, so you don't have to keep coming back to coaches and therapists.
Understood.
And that is obviously not related specifically to dating, that's related to you. And then it changes everything in your life. So people end up getting married quite quickly after that. But married women also want it for their marriages and for their kids. And so I teach the same tools, but in a different format for married women. Yeah.
Right. There's kind of the hook, what gets someone interested, but the meat's the same.
Exactly.
Right.
Totally. Especially when you're going deep inside. So that's what I do, and people can find me on JackieGlaser.com, or Instagram is my main platform, Jackie Glaser Official with an S. Jackie Glaser with an S.
Jackie
Glaser Official. And you can DM me there. You can get me through the website.
Beautiful.
And I'm happy to send a free guide of what's keeping you stuck, like why are you stuck. And they can find that at JackieGlaser.com/Eli.
Oh, awesome. That's Eli.
Eli.
Yeah, but people who are listening probably know how to spell my name by now. Yeah, last time, hopefully you got, I'm sure you did, but our listeners gave extremely positive feedback.
I got a lot.
The talk, so that was...
a lot of people showed up on calls. They heard me from your podcast.
Oh, really?
Oh, yeah.
That's neat.
Really
Somehow people listen to this thing. It still surprises me.
It's amazing. Well, I think it's because you're very real and you draw out realness from people.
Awesome. Appreciate that.
People like to, you really follow the discussion. It's not just firing questions at a guest.
Right.
It's a conversation.
Yeah, I don't come in with anything. And the few times I have, I've had to like kind of abandon it.
Just let go of it, yeah.
Yeah, pretty quickly.
I like that about you.
So I try to...
Thank you for having me.
Thank you for coming. We'll do it again.
Great, I'd love to.